Our last game, guys, the Colts beat the Titans 38-30, a very Anthony Richardson stat line, if there ever was one. 7 of 11 for 131 yards and a passing touchdown and interception. Almost just as many carries, 9 for 70 yards and a touchdown. The story of this game, more notably, Matthew, was Jonathan Taylor getting 29 carries, 218 yards, 3 touchdowns, a fantasy football semifinals hero.
Well, honestly, probably a fantasy football consolation bracket hero. Because I think most people that have Jonathan Taylor lost last week.
That's fair.
And they're just sitting there watching, similar to the Grape Slappers, just watching your team in the losers bracket go off the week after. I know of a number of people that tweeted at me just basically saying that Jonathan Taylor's the lost fumble, the fumble at the goal line last week was the difference between them moving on and not. But yes, John, if you managed to survive, JT brought you home. Second best fantasy game of his career. It's the third best fantasy game by a running back this season. Barkley and Kamara have had better. He had more fantasy points in this game, 39.8, than he had in his previous 4 games combined.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
On Jonathan Taylor, who has been on our show before, who's super nice, very accommodating, just the decent dude. Yeah, and also after he had the fumble last week in Denver, he stood there in front of a pool of reporters. He answered every question about it, and they were asking the same question for 5 minutes, and he still just didn't lose it. Was very contrite, and so it was great to see him deliver this type of performance. And I think the thing too, Connor, is that a lot of this year, he hasn't had a great year before this game, and he's just kind of looked slow. He's not slow, clearly, because he seems to have all the explosion. I think it's just a combination of the offensive line and just the offense being a bit wonky. But he looked like 2021 Jonathan Taylor yesterday.
Also, keep in mind, Jay, you're talking about Anthony Richardson comes into the season with very little experience. Then he gets benched. Then it's Joe Flacco. It's in a completely different offense with Joe Flacco under center, and now Richardson's back. And so I think there's just been a lot of moving pieces here in Indianapolis. It's amazing. I mean, again, I know people want to, are sometimes negative. I think Shane Steichen is an unbelievable coach. Great. The fact that the Colts are still alive in the play, they're not likely going to make the playoffs, but the fact that we're sitting here at the end of Week 16 and they're still technically alive.
They're on the in the hunt graphic.
They're on the in the hunt graphic, and yes, they're in the AFC South. I get it, but still. Steichen is. I think Steichen's a hell of a coach, honestly.
If the reality is, if Taylor doesn't drop that ball, they're up 20-6. Bo Nix is having an implosion. They win that game. They're 8-7, and they're in the box seat to make the playoffs. So it's tough, but Taylor atoned as much as he could yesterday.
But worth noting that since he returned in Week 11, Anthony Richardson is the 9th best quarterback in fantasy. So it took him a while to get there, but making good on the promise that we all saw for him in the preseason.
On the other side of this game, guys, from the Titans, Tyjae Spears gets 10 carries, 27 yards. What you care about is the 2 touchdowns. What we expected is the pass game production, 3 receptions, 39 yards. Calvin Ridley also gets a touchdown and capitalizes on more bigger plays, 3 catches for 78 yards. Matthew, this offense just doesn't have a ton of consistency going for it. I guess Spears has been recently the guy with Pollard hurt.
57% of the snaps he played in this one, he's out-snapped Tony Pollard in both games. Now, they were down big in this game, and then they made a furious comeback. So I think that's part of it, because even though they use Pollard in the passing game, Spears is, quote-unquote, the passing down back. But, yes, Pollard less than 100% healthy. Spears has looked better at this stage of the season. So I do think that I will say next week they're playing Jacksonville. So I do think Ridley and both running backs are viable. Also, Mason Rudolph, by the way, is suddenly sort of interesting.
Also, Chigakonkwo had 11 targets, double more than any other player on the Titans. So in a favorable matchup against the Jags, also a potential streamer.
We'll have more time to talk about this game, but I just think this is a game that'll be easy to ignore. It's Titans Jaguars, but I'm going
to watch every second of it.
Right. No, well, there's going to be some fantasy goodness, some unearthed fantasy goodness for people that are struggling. Again, it's a championship week, so we'll talk about it more as the week goes on.
Let's take a look at the notable injuries from Week 16 so far. Jalen Hurts with the concussion. James Conner left the game with a knee injury. Kenneth Walker dealing with an ankle. Justice Hill also in concussion protocol. Drake London dealing with a hamstring injury. And then, of course, the brutal season-ending injury for Tank Dell. That was obviously a knee injury. If you are going to be down one of these guys, there's a good chance you're looking to add somebody, whether it's for championship week, whether it's for consolation. Go ahead, Matthew.
Well, I was just going to say, Kendre Miller is still available in a lot of leagues. These are players that are available in more than 50% of Yahoo leagues. Grab Kendre Miller now before he plays tonight. We don't expect Alvin Kamara to come back the rest of the way. Jalen McMillan, huge game last night. If it wasn't for Jordan Davis making not only a game-saving interception, but also a fantasy-saving situation.
Right.
I was against Jalen McMillan in a surprising number of leagues, and if he catches that touchdown, if McMillan catches that touchdown, I lose. Luckily, Jordan Davis comes up with the interception. I managed to move on in a number of leagues that I was playing against McMillan, but over his last 3 games, 19 fantasy points per game, a 20% target share. They're clearly going to throw. And then both Raiders running backs, Madison and Abdullah, getting some work.
I appreciate that during championship week, we could still get Hunter Henry on the top waiver waiver. It's graphic.
Past 5 games, he's got a 25% target share.
He cooked yesterday.
He really he
Hunter
did.
Henry cooked.
I'm going to call you up in like the middle of the offseason and just be like, hey, let's talk Hunter Henry.
It's been a while. And we did it for so long.
Yeah.
Just reminiscing on the good times. All right, we're going to take our first break. When we're back, we got Weekend Warriors and Sunday Scaries coming up right after this.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.